Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the fastest growing emerging markets globally, but definitely here in the US. We're going to be talking with Harry Kazazian. He's the CEO of 22 Red. It's a California-based cannabis lifestyle company with operations in both Nevada and Arizona. So I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about what's happening with cannabis. Some of you guys know that I've invested quite a bit in cannabis. I am following and holding several cannabis-related stocks. And again, today we're going to be talking about 22 Red is the brand name. Harry Kazazian is the CEO. He's going to bring us up to date, what's happening in the cannabis industry. And then we're going to get into some business conversation as well. I'm excited to have him on the show. Harry Kazazian, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much, Bert. I really appreciate the warm introduction and want to say hello to all your listeners. And yeah, it's really exciting times, considering everything that's going on in the world today. I would say that as everybody's probably listening in, let's just tell you that everybody's life's been affected by COVID lately and the election and the whole feels like the world is almost going to end. But one thing that keeps trucking away is the marijuana industry is still, moving forward and working through it. As everybody will tell you, the two things, that did well through COVID is still cannabis. I think when people are stressed, it is a form of relief.
Sure.
Having a drink and or a smoke or whatever people feel that it makes them relax. And really that's what it's all about, right? It's to enhance everybody's life. And that's why we're excited to be part of it.
Well, and what's interesting too is, cannabis has been around for a very long time. And because the federal government kind of put a taboo on it, it hasn't been researched as well as it could have been, right? And interestingly enough, I read an article not too long ago, and I think there's even a documentary about Nixon and his staff doing research on the benefits of cannabis, benefits of marijuana. And, they found that it was non-addictive and that it had all these medicinal benefits, but yet they decided to use it as a way to control. In this documentary article, he outlawed it because he wanted to control minorities, which is what, again, the article talked about. So I found that interesting, but I think that, it's been this very long uphill battle to get cannabis approved legally or to legalize marijuana. And I think, we still have a little ways to go. I can't remember. There's like 30 states that have approved marijuana for both recreational and medical use. Are we up to 30 or 36? Where are we at?
Close to that. I think it's there. And then, one way or another. And then there's a bunch that are still teeing up for it to become recreationally legal as well, or medicinally. So, yeah, I think the bus has left the train. It's like the train's left
the station there.
And right now it's there's no putting it back. And this isn't even a political issue. I mean, look, Oklahoma is as red state as you can get. They've legalized it. Mississippi is as red state as you can get. They've legalized it. So I don't think that. I think it's. I think all my Republican friends like to smoke it as well as my Democrat friends. So I would tell you, this is becoming. It's the best thing to do. Is you don't want it to be a political thing. I think it should be bigger than that. And that's one of the issues that I try to do is people that don't necessarily agree with me, I try to convince them to explain that why this is what it is. And, something you were talking about, like alcohol was illegal.
Yes.
Okay. And then studies come out now that wine is good for and even some alcohol is good for your blood flow and helps prevent heart attacks. So, right. I mean, that was illegal in the Prohibition days. So it's just because, and I can understand, is everything overdone? Anything, you drink too much Coke every day, you're going to die of God knows what,
Right, so right.
Anything that's overdone, is bad for you. And I think that everything done within the realm of what it does for you and for, you know, your mental well-being is good. So I really feel that it's really been stigmatized and put in a class of like with other drugs for a while, which is ridiculous. You can't put this in the class of some of the drugs that it was labeled in before.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And you look at some places, you know, Amsterdam has always been one of those cities where the government kind of regulates all of these drugs. You know, from not only cannabis, but, you know, cocaine and heroin and all this stuff is accessible. My point being is, look, and also to your point is that, you know, when you start abusing anything, whether it's ice cream or, you know, cannabis, it could result in some negative stuff. But my thinking is this: as humans, we are always looking to, you know, to, what do you call it, to maybe relax or change the way we feel, whether it's alcohol or cannabis or food or drink or whatever. You know, you cannot control human nature as much as people want, right? I mean, you know, what do you call it? I remember back in the day when they passed the seatbelt laws, and I was one of those individuals. I'm not going to wear my seatbelt. I haven't worn my seatbelt ever. And of course, after you get 1 or 2 tickets, you know, maybe I'll wear my seatbelts now. So you can, to an extent, legislate some behavior. Now we're all wearing masks because we're trying to collectively control this pandemic. But my point being, back to the alcohol, look, even though it was illegal, people were still getting their hands on alcohol. People are going to do what people want to do. And so you can either, you know, I guess, join it, legislate it, or regulate it to an extent, but we're human and we're always going to do whatever we want, no matter what the law is, because we're human. There's going to be a certain percentage of these people that are going to do whatever they want. And I think back to what you're saying with marijuana, they worked really hard. They, being the government, worked really hard to stigmatize it. I remember back in elementary school watching that movie Reefer Madness. And even back then, it was so over the top stupid that even at the elementary level, we thought it was dumb. And interestingly enough, most of my friends were like, we should try that.
So, you know, it's funny you say that. And you brought up Amsterdam, but so 22 Red, we've collaborated. Shavo, one of the founding members that was one of the founders of 22 Red, who's in the music industry, one of the biggest rock bands, System of a Down. When they were touring Amsterdam, he used to love going to Amsterdam. That was his thing. When they go to Europe, they had that date marked on their calendar. They used to tell their tour man, you book a tour there, because if we go to Europe, if you don't do Amsterdam show, we ain't going.
All right.
That being said, you know, we talked to one of the ones that owns a lot of the coffee shops, and they're one of the biggest cannabis. They're called strain hunters. They're the ones, if you guys could all look them up. But they go hunting for strains in Africa. One of the founders of that company actually ended up catching malaria and unfortunately passing away in Africa, just chasing the next, looking into strains in the jungles, because they're out there in the jungles looking for that new strain that, you know, we've missed. So, and just the other day, Shalo was telling me that he was talking to Jonas and said, Amsterdam's starting to own tour, you know, like outlawing locals from going in to tour. Like, they're really stricting up and they're going the other way.
Interesting.
Sort of what we're doing in California and the rest of this country. And which was really mind boggling, because I'm like, man, I always looked at them as like, they're in the forefront, right? But I guess it all goes back to, you know, proper use and so on. I think our industry's we have the momentum going for us, as you say, because we're gonna hit some bumps further down the line. I was reading an article about like kids, adolescent use is way up, and people are being impaired in driving. So what I would really ask your listeners is, if you really, you got to respect what, don't give it to minors. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying I smoked weed when I was doing it. It's like we got to be mindful of it. Just because a kid asks you, don't,
crisis, if you will, because you had several stupid people.
Listeners, it's funny. My goal was every time I started a class, it means I was trying a little too hard because I just wanted just enough to get out of school, because that's not, man, that teacher didn't grade me right away, because I was always just trying to do what I can just to get that C, because I wanted to be, so I was really that average student. I had a business out of the garage, and, professional career, I was very successful. And so that's, where it was. So I would tell you that I'm a failed musician, but I love it. I look at people that get to do it for a living and make money, and I'm envious. So reason I give you that old failed musician thing, that's really the background of how I met Shavo, one of the founders of System of a Down, the singer of their band, their multi-platinum award-winning albums and go on and so forth. So when we were doing it, we were auditioning keyboard players, and current singer of System, he came down, his name is Serge Tonkin, to audition to play in our band. And we jammed and this and that, and we were playing back then, I remember, like, it was Aussie stuff, and Dio was really big, and it was all the dark Aussie. Was that first album, I think it was Bark at the Moon or whatever that album was. And so after we got done, we basically huddled up and said, you know what, that guy's never going to make it in music. And the reason I say that I was the loser that didn't make it. He ended up being the lead singer of one of the biggest metal bands, iconic, playing in front of 100,000 people. So, all I could say is that you just don't know how the cards are laid out. So fast forward, as a failed musician, every time my buddies, I still love going in the studio, listening to music with them as they're making it. Or whenever I got opportunities when they were touring Europe with friends, hey, you know what, I'll tag along and live vicariously through their moment,
Right.
And that's how I met Shavo, and Shavo was best friends with my nephew. So we, we're in a circle of friends. So Shavo and Mike and Sean, the three of them, and Sean has been in the cannabis trade for north of 20 years in the growing side. So when things were a little bit in the dark side to today. So, because when I say 20 years, people are probably saying, well, I don't know if it was, but Sean's been doing it for 20 years plus. And he's the best. And so the three of them got together and said, you know what, we should put something together that's music and art. And my nephew Mike's in the apparel business and fashion, and Shavo's in music, and he loves smoking cannabis. And Sean, they said, we should start some, lifestyle brand. And so the three of them started 22 Red. And just like every good idea, I mean, they had everything working right. They launched it. They were doing things, but really none of them have run a business and they were hitting bumps in the road early on. They needed to raise some capital, put all that stuff together. So they reached out to me and said, hey, Harry, would you want to join us? Would you want to be the fourth partner and run the business? Because, all of us have our different things going on. Shavo still goes on tour, everything else. And, I looked at it and I said, you know what? I'm good with it. I was excited by it because I felt like I was going back to the garage, and that's what got me going. I always love challenges. So when I did this, I didn't do it for the money. God's been good to me. I've already got things that I would financially rewarded. I wasn't looking for another big score or everything else, but I really like the idea of doing something today and doing something that could help people doing something that is an industry that nobody knows what's happening, which way it's zigging or zagging.
Right.
And all that was just everything from my business side, the challenge of like, I'm in the Wild West, new frontier, trying to figure it out. It's still a little illegal, so you can still get shot, right? So you don't know what's going to happen, and you know whether it's banking, and I go on and on all the challenges. So it kind of excited me, and I believed in what we were doing, which is creating a lifestyle brand that really championed art, and that's why I decided to, join 22 Red, and it's been a great adventure since.
All right. So let me ask you, the name 22 Red, where does that name came from, or what does that signify?
I think 22 was, Sean was born on the 22nd. His band was signed on the 22nd. I mean, there's just so many significance. His two kids, I forgot, one of the two kids, if you add up their dates together, comes in the 22nd. Like it's just, I go on and on and on. That it's just been like 22 has been coming up in his life over and over again.
Right.
So he felt he connected with that number, and then the three of them loved red as their color. So, so they went with 22 Red, and that's where the name was born. It was born from the three of the guys, as they were saying, what do we do? They wanted something to be personal,
Right.
and it was.
Well, and the great thing about it is it's very memorable, very easy to remember, and very difficult to misspell. So that's important. When you're typing on a keyboard or a phone or something, you got to be able to be to be able to spell it. Let's talk about what you see happening. I mean, first of all, we have a new administration. President Biden has been in office now a few weeks. What's your take? Do you think that with Biden in the office, is that going to help the industry, or is it going to hurt it? What's your take?
I think it's going to help overall, because obviously he's pro cannabis, and there's two political parties. We could agree that one's a little more pro than the other about it, but I just want to make sure they do it the right way and not try to shove it through. I mean, right now it's very state by state regulated. I don't know what would happen if it becomes federally legal, because a lot of states are making money on taxable income, and they wouldn't want to let it go.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of the things that I've heard many times is that the banks have been very slow to, because the banks are federal, and so since cannabis is kind of on a state by state basis, that a lot of banks have not been forthcoming or easy to work with when it comes to the cannabis money. Have you guys found that to be true?
Yes.
Or
Yes. It's almost impossible to do banking. Still, though, a lot of transactions in this industry is done the old-fashioned way with greenback. So I would say yes.
So let me ask you that. Okay, so if you're mainly a cash business, that's got to be a little bit dangerous, because if all of a sudden you do.
We as a company we work through everything that we work with. We don't work with. We work our way out of the cash part.
Okay.
Where we don't. But I know that a lot of our distributors and retailers and so on, they're challenged. California's got credit unions and other things that are now changing. Okay. Because they're not federally insured. So I think still there's ways of things are work, but it's still very difficult. I think everybody can find, but again, through credit unions and creative ways of working with one another. But yeah, it definitely is challenging. And so, yeah, going back to what would happen with this administration, I don't know. I think the states don't want to let it. It's in a weird way. There's a lot of benefits with the way things are, and the states bring in a lot of money. Just think about it. Like, some states are cheaper to produce than other states. And then I think the big challenge is going to be, what if they legalize it? Could I send weed from California to New York? You can in other products, but they're not going to, no one's going to like that, because people in New York are going to be like, oh man, those California growers are putting us out of business. So especially with everybody wants to support their local economy. In other words, they want their own local growers. So I think what's happened is this grassroots industry is starting to develop in all these states, and everyone's going to be very territorial.
Sure.
So it sounds funny. So everybody that is for legalizing pot really doesn't want it to get legalized. And then think about it. Look at all the guys, states that aren't illegal, you can still get pot. So how about those people that are making? So I'm telling you, there's a force that's in the cannabis business that would rather leave it the way it is.
Sure, and that makes sense. Look, if I'm a state, Colorado, they went from being a millions of dollars in deficit, not being able to pay their bills like most of our governments, to within the first year they're in the black, and they can start paying all their bills, and they can improve the roads, and they can improve healthcare. And so I think I could see why they would not want to have to share some of that revenue.
Yeah, and it goes deeper than that. For example, Colorado, I forgot what the number was, 700-800 dispensaries.
Yeah.
A state that's like, go look at the pot. It's really one big city, Denver, and as far as populous state, you wouldn't call it. Well, and then there's states like Florida where they, you could only have I forgot what it was. You could only get one license, you could go vertical, you could only have so many stores. And then there's other states like Arizona, I think only like 10, or it's just they limit the retail dispensaries so that each dispensary is like worth a fortune.
Right.
But in Denver, they're like popcorn. So how do you do it?
Right.
So I think, sorry about that.
That's all right.
So really where I'm going with it is that's just the dispensaries and how you could have it. Now, so what happens? Anybody could open it. So they're going to say, oh, we want to regulate. So some states have too many, way too many, and have to retail shops in Colorado one time or another went out of business because anybody could open one. And the opening a grow was a lot easier. And in other states were very restrictive. They are till today, trying to control how many retail license, who can get it, what they can do. So what I would say that upsets me today is, as much as we talk about, some of the restrictions and Nixon and what he did and all that, I think it's the underlying restrictions. Bless you. It's contagious. I would say it's the people it's the underlying restrictions and the taxes and the bureaucracy and all these things that have been created. It wasn't why I think it was legalized. When it was legalized, it was supposed to be so it's, all about it's all everything's led is really why. Somebody came to me and goes, man, I don't get it. Why is pot so expensive in a retail store? I said, because they tax the crap out of it in 4 different ways, from all the way to A to Z. Now, if the feds get in it, they're going to tax it. But the whole idea of legalizing it was to make it better and cheaper. And I feel like we're going opposite of what the initial intentions was. And that's kind of bothers me, because who are we taxing? A lot of people that we're taxing people that really shouldn't be taxed. And that's really why I say it, that I feel like both political parties should get together, but they shouldn't over-regulate this and over-tax it, because all we're doing is pushing it underground again. And that's not where we want it.
Well, and unfortunately, you have, for lack of better terms, especially in Washington, D.C., you have no accountability how the money is used. So if they can bring in more revenue, there
will be. If it gets legalized, I promise you, what they're going to say is the same way it was. This is going to generate billions of dollars and we're going to be able, and then, some Republicans will say, well, this will be good because we could buy more fighter jets. And some Democrats say, well, then this will help fund the more homeless and, green. I mean, bottom line is they both want the money.
Right.
And they're going to okay, let's legalize it. And that's their argument they're going to use, and let's tax it. Now we'll have this, besides all these state taxes, we'll have this big government federal tax. And I wish if they would legalize it without doing that, I guess I'd be a lot happier, but I'm just, I'm not optimistic of that.
All right, so let me ask you this. 22 Red, again, you guys are in 2 states, Nevada and
3,
Arizona?
California, Nevada,
California.
and Arizona.
So
you Colorado.
So you recently opened Nevada and Arizona.
Yes.
Okay.
Last 6 months.
Okay. And so what do you guys see in the near future? You've opened up these 2 states. Are you guys going to have multiple dispensaries? What's the next move for 22 Red?
Well, the way we work, because it's state by state regulated, we work with partners in different states, and we look for that business partner that specializes in that state, and then we align with them, and we make sure that they're able to have the quality products. CBD, obviously, we could ship through states. If you go to our website, 22red.com, you can see all our CBD products. So that one you could buy anywhere. So we do that. When it comes to cannabis, we just point you to a local dispensary, or you can look it up in your state. If you're in Arizona, Nevada, you can find our products. So really that's what we do. And as we expand out, we have a lot of inquiries from a lot of different states right now. And we just we were a little slow about signing on because we want to make sure we get everything right as a brand. And then we'll add, additional states as we expand.
Sure.
Our goal is to be in every state that has legal cannabis, in medicinal or recreational.
Gotcha. So
expanding in Canada right now, just so those Canadian followers, we are in talks and negotiations with Canada.
Good. So in California, do you guys operate your own stores or just partner there as well?
No, we don't operate our own stores. We work through stores.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's cool. That's an interesting model there. So you partner with existing distributors or stores, whatever you want to call it.
We started with the grow first. We find the right grow that would be able to grow our genetics, and ensure that they have the right flower. We get them the tissue culture and everything else that meets our standards, and then we put the sales team together, and we open up stores. Chavo uses his relationships, and we do a lot of make sure we get, and we're not only about cannabis either. Just so everybody knows, we have music coming out. We have a tattoo artist that endorses all our art. We try to make sure that we're more than just cannabis, and that's what makes us real.
I love it. All right. Hey, Harry, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much for stopping by. And I'd love to bring you back in 6 months or, whatever, 9 months,
come back.
Kind of catch up on what's happening. Because I bet you in the next 6 months, 9 months, there are going to be some other changes happening in the industry. I'd love to have you back.
I would bet on that.
All right, man.
If anybody out there knows what's going to happen, then they're the only one.
Right.
So
something's going to happen.
Yeah, something, we don't know what. So wear your seatbelts, buckle up, and let's see where this goes, guys.
All right. Harry, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Bert. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.